Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I'm able to get details using my watercolor pencils like you see here in the little macaroons. So I want to start by laying a base layer down so that I have something to work upon afterwards. So I'm starting with my lightest color here, and where the light's coming on top of the cookie here, the one that I'm working on, I want to make sure that I keep that top left edge the lightest area, so that's where I make sure to use my lightest pencil. Then I want to come in with my second darkest pencil, so whether you're using 3 different pencils here or 4, I want to use my second darkest pencil, and I'm just outlining the darkest areas. So where I had my line art, where the little crevices are around the cookie, I want to make sure I keep those areas so that I don't lose them when I'm putting the other colors down and starting to blend this layer out. And then I just go back in with my other colors and start coloring in the rest of this cookie. And then anywhere I notice that I need to put in those little darker crevices. Now, usually I try to keep my line art pretty minimal, but for these cookies, I did put in the biggest little crevices that I could see. And then I kind of just go back in afterwards and create some more once we've got this first layer blended out. So I'm using a couple of different pinks here, and I'm trying to look at the shadows in the reference picture. So there's more shadows towards the right side of the cookie because we have a secondary light coming from the left side, the left top side. So I want to keep that in mind. Then I just take my water brush here, and I always start from light to dark. Now, I really like the water brushes that I use because as you see here, I'm going to be going over all of the areas together, and it's not smudging that darker color around. It is melting it enough so that it melts into the tooth of the paper, but it's not smudging it because that water brush has pretty great water control. And then once I've got everything blended out, I start going back in with my darkest or my second darkest color, and I'm sort of moving the pencil around in these random little patterns, and I'm creating little circles and little dashes, and that's helping to create that cookie texture. So this is giving the look of those little craters that you can see when you're looking at a cookie. And you want to do this with at least 2 colors because it's going to be your base color where you can sort of see the crater. And then there's going to be a little bit of a darker area in those craters. So you want to take a darker pencil here. So I'm using, I think, a reddish pink color and then more of like a violet pink color. And having that contrast in the cookie where we've got our lighter areas and our darker areas is going to give it even more of a 3D look and help with the detail that we're trying to achieve. Then I go over and blend everything one last time. Now, the technique that I start using at this point is I say I'm jumping or skipping my water brush over the surface. So I'm not trying to hit every area. I don't have to have everything blended out. And if you like the way it looks without even blending, that's totally fine. But I just kind of bring my brush around and I dab it over some of the areas. And it gives a little bit of texture to the cookie. So some of it's blended out and some of it's got a little bit more texture to it, and I find that helps with trying to achieve that look. And I've done the same thing with the other pink cookie, and now I'm just doing the same techniques with the purple one. So again, I start by putting that lightest purple color in, and then I take my mid-tone or my darkest purple, and I want to get those dark crevices in so that I don't lose them once I start layering over my colors again. And then I just take my lightest purple color and pretty much cover the whole cookie with this, and I can still see those darker lines. And then I take that darker pencil again and I start putting in some of the shadow areas. So I also want to be looking at the shadow areas in the reference photos. Even though I'm using different colors, I can still look at those shadow areas, know where I need to put the colors that I've chosen. So for these cookies, you could really pick any colors that you want. So let's say you want some green cookies in there. You need at least a light, a mid-tone, and a dark color. I think for some of these cookies, I've picked 4 different colors, but as long as you have 3 different colors, then you have your light area covered, your mid-tone area, and your dark area. And that's going to help with the realistic look of the cookie. Then I take my water brush and I blend this base layer out the exact same way as I did with the pink cookies. And I use the same colors for that little piece of cookie that's sticking out on the far left-hand side of this, I just kept it a little bit more simple because it is a little out of focus over there, so I didn't put as much detail into the cookie. Then I'm going ahead and I'm doing the exact same thing with my blue cookie. Now I picked some more bluish teal colors for this cookie because I love teal and I thought it would give it a little bit of a better contrast because some of the other cookies are a lot warmer in color and I wanted this one to be just a little bit cooler to stand out. So again, I take those dark blue colors, I block in my dark areas, and then I cover the whole cookie in my lightest color. And then I come in and I'm fixing up any of the shadow areas in that cookie or making any of those little crevices within the cookie a little bit darker before I come in and blend out this layer. And again, with this layer, it can be blended a little bit more smoothly because we still have to go back in with the purple and the blue cookies and add a little bit more of that texture onto them, because they're still a little bit too smooth at this point compared to the pink or the yellow cookies. Now I'm taking my darkest purple or my second darkest purple, and I've got it a little bit sharper at this point. So for the whole picture at this point, I haven't really worried about sharpening my pencils up because I didn't really need to get little tiny details. Now at this point, because I do want smaller details in the cookie, I went ahead and sharpened it up. And again, I'm just doing that little random pattern within the cookie where I can see that texture. And then I just come in and slightly blend that out. So I do that jumping technique where I'm missing some areas and blending some areas out. It just gives a little bit more texture. And I do the exact same thing with the blue cookie here. Now this is where I grab the Payne's Gray pencil, and I use that because I didn't have quite enough dark blue colors that I wanted to use, and the Payne's Gray worked really well for this cookie. You'll notice when I'm working with watercolors, I do love to use my Payne's Gray to mix in with some of my colors to darken them a little bit, and I find the Payne's Gray mixes well with just about any color out there except for yellows. But using this as my darkest color in these cookies kind of helps tie them together a little bit, and it also makes that contrast pop just a little bit more because I'm making my darks just a little bit darker. Now at this point, I need to go in and sort of tie all of the cookies together. So I'm taking some of the colors that I've used within the cookies and I'm actually layering them on the cookies next to them. So for instance, the pink cookie, I'll take some of the pinks that I used and put it on the yellow cookies and the purple cookies, and vice versa with the other colors. And then I just lightly blend it out a little bit, and then I go back in just one last time with that Payne's Gray pencil, and I just darken up the darkest areas in all of the cookies. I really liked how it looked in the blue cookie, so I decided to add it to some of the other ones, and I find it just made the contrast a little bit better in the cookies, and they just stand out a little bit more. Now, before I go in for my finishing highlights on our piece here, I want to just darken up a few areas in the bowl. I feel like it's looking a little flat, so I'm just taking one of the darker pencils that I used in the bowl and using that in some of the more shadowed areas and trying to give the bowl a little bit more of a 3D look so it looks a little bit rounder. And then I just go ahead and give that a quick blend out. Now for one of my favorite parts is the highlights. So I am using the Inktense white block here. Now because this is water-based medium, you could pretty much use any water-based highlighter that would go on top. So you could use gouache, you could use the P.H. Martin's bleed proof white, but the one thing you want to know about the Inktense block is it does go down fairly translucent, but as it dries, it will dry more opaque. So most of the other products that you put down, they're opaque right away, but this one will look more translucent, so don't layer it up too much at first or you're going to have this completely white mess. So that's where you're going to see me. I sort of tap a little bit on a cookie and then I move to another cookie or another area, and then I tap a little bit more on there. Then I'll move back to the previous area if I need to add a little bit more to it. And I just take the tip of my brush and rub it right onto the block, and then I go right onto my piece of work like that. Now I decided at the end I'm going to add a little bit of shadow to this because he looked weird just floating in space there. So because my strongest highlight is coming from the right hand side and it's it's coming down at sort of an angle, as you can see by the shadow that's created over his little feet. So I'm taking two of my gray pencils here. I just chose a lighter gray and a darker gray, and I put those down, and then I just take my water brush and blend them right out. And that just gives him something to sort of stand on, like he's standing on a little surface. If you want to see how I did the rest of this cookie jar, you can click on this video. If not, you can check out my other videos that I have on my channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.